So, what is your how did you first get started with AFC touring the AFC and all of that stuff? And then you have like so much experience behind the scenes with other teams, like other schools, and you just do a lot of stuff all around. What other kind of stuff do you do besides your podcast and your writing that we know about?
Let's see. Well, I do cover. I'm covering the AU Pro basketball, so that's fun to do that. Which, if you don't know AU Pro basketball, everyone talks about Unrivaled. AU Pro basketball is actually another league that involves women that play in the WNBA and overseas.
Oh,
It has players like now the new league Seattle Storm guard Lexi Brown has let's see, Izzy Harrison, who's been a veteran in the WNBA, has let's see, Sydney Colson, who a lot of people love.
yeah.
She's here as well. I mean, there's a lot of different WNBA and overseas talent that are here playing, and it's the way the game goes is I don't know if you know about how the game goes, but basically there's four captains, and the captains draft their team every week.
Oh,
So
wow, I
you
did
draft
not
your team.
know
So
that.
it's a 5-on-5 game, but there's only one winner at the end in terms of one individual winner at the end. And you get points for making baskets, assists, winning quarters. You get like 60 points. So if you win a quarter, you get 60 points, and you're on a leaderboard after every week. And the top four of that leaderboard with points, assists, winning a quarter, winning a game, those people become the captains the next week and they get to pick their team. So it kind of goes like that for 4 weeks. And at the last week, whoever's at the top of the leaderboard overall is the winner and the one winner of the entire thing.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's fun. It's
fair for all.
fun.
You said that you've met Lacey Brown, right?
Yes, I met Lexi Brown. Actually, I was here when they had their opening press conference. I went to their opening press conference when they announced they were coming to Nashville. Got to meet Megan Perry, who's over like AU Pro Sports. Interviewed her, interviewed Lexi Brown. Of course, she's been dealing with having Crohn's, so I asked her how she was
Mhm.
doing health wise, and giving people an update on how she was doing. Got to talk to Sydney Colson, Teresa Pleasant. I always mispronounce her name. I'm sorry. Everybody calls her
Yeah.
TP. So I
Yes.
got to talk to TP. So I got to talk to all of them. Got to go to a camp that they were having before the season, where they were doing the camp for girls coming out and teaching them basketball. They had like let's see, Shea Petty was out there, who was a guard.
Oh wow.
It was Izzy Harrison, her sister Dory Harrison, who played at Lipscomb University here in Nashville, and is
I know
also
what David
in.
Lipscomb is. Yes, my friend
Yep,
graduated from there. One of my best friends.
yep.
She's having a birthday next month. We're the same age. We went to Harding
Hmm.
University our freshman year, and that's how I
Hmm.
met her in Arkansas. And then she transferred to Lipscomb. Okay, Nashville.
Yeah. So she's in that, and there was a few other players as well. My names are kind of escaping me right now, but yeah, there was a good bit of players that were playing in it, and that were there at that camp. And then all of a sudden, I got to interview Izzy Harrison before the camp, so I got to
Oh,
talk to
that's
her
cool.
and have ask her a few questions. Then I also asked her about WNBA free agency, since she
Yeah.
is a free agent in I believe she's a free agent in the WNBA. And then
Yeah.
also got to speak with, then of course, covering the game, seeing the environment. This is their best season, they've had in the 4-year existence with attendance, with, all those different things. This is their best year they've had basically in their 4-year run being in Nashville, actually. This is their first year in Nashville, but their best season they've had in their 4-year run so
Yeah,
far.
it's such a big thing, with the WNBA now. It is super
Hmm.
exciting. Now, you said you cover some AU stuff as well.
Oh yeah, definitely with AU pro basketball. That's what I'm speaking of now, and I did actually I have covered some games. Actually, got some footage from that, and also I did get to interview Lexi Brown after she recently got traded from the Los Angeles Sparks to the Seattle Storm. So I
Right.
actually got to interview her after one of the games and ask her about that, and she gave me a pretty candid answer. She's excited about that, and she's basically talked about how things were kind of tumultuous for her in terms of, being on the court, off the court, different head coaches and all those different things. So, definitely, it's good that she had that trust in me to actually, provide me that information and actually that story as well. So that was awesome. Awesome to be able to do that and just to get interact with the players. They're always very, very kind, very, very forthcoming, and always just cool people. And I mean, I love it. I mean, honestly, this is kind of a preview or kind of a show for Nashville to say, hey, maybe we can have a WNBA team because there's a team to get put together with Candace Parker, former governor here, Haslam, Faith Hill, and Tim McGraw. They're putting together a team to bring the summit here. The team would be called the Summit after Pat Summit. That's where I think that they're trying to name
so
it.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Faith Hill in person, so you and I kind of talked before I started recording. I have family in Nashville. Unfortunately, it's just my cousin now, but it was my aunt and uncle and my cousin. And my cousin and her husband, they retired from Davidson County Sheriff's Office. Shout out to them. 30 plus years, both of them. And they have a son that is an adult now. And so, and they all, well, my cousin and the son attend Schrader Lane Church of Christ in Nashville.
I know where that is.
Yes, and so
that's on Trinity Lane, I think.
Yes, it is. So earlier when you said that, I was like, Trinity sounds familiar. And so now like how we're talking. You're like, okay, this girl do know Nashville a little bit, just because I've been to Nashville maybe 3 or 4 times visiting them as a kid and as an adult as well. And I talk to my cousin Pam all the time. Like she's the only child, so we really call each other sister because she's my dad's first cousin, but she's only like 9 years older than me, so we're kind of like in the same age bracket. She might be maybe 10 years, but still not too far ahead of me. But yeah, so I mean, it's such an exciting things you have going, and I know you have. I was wanting to know, how you got started. Did you just, one day decide, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, or did you have any like formal education that you decided to study, or what made you just pick up the pen or keyboard or what have you and just start journaling?
Well, actually, I just had a lot of opinions and honestly, picked up a BlackBerry and started writing on a BlackBerry. This shows my age, but yeah, I did not. It was called the Everyday Man Sports Blog. That is the original thing that I started writing on. I couldn't write, but maybe like 250 words at that time. So I wasn't very skilled at it, but I just kept going and going and going. I'd write 1, maybe 2 articles a day, be NBA, NFL, anything. Then I got a computer, then started really cooking at that point and just kept going. And I was able to do articles from 250 to 500 to 1,000 words and more than that. So just kind of, just putting in the reps, putting in the time. And that's how I kind of got started and just looking around and paying attention to different people that were out there. Like, I would say the people that kind of influenced me a lot were Jamel Hills, the Michael Smiths, the Bomani Joneses, I watched a lot of what they did, and I watched a lot of what some of my peers were doing as well that were, more in the business than what I was at the time. So to kind of get tips on things, what not to do, what to do, and then also asking questions of them if they were within earshot or receptive to me asking them questions as well. So I've talked to, I don't know if you know Mr. Bill Roden, but yeah. Yeah, I actually, I've of course I've asked him a few questions as well over my time. Yeah, and funny thing was I accidentally was on one of the podcasts of his like way back when, me, him, and Jamal Murphy. Yep, we were actually I was actually on a podcast accidentally because I actually was going to because I was I just was going to say something to them, but ended up being on the actual podcast with them.
Yay!
So, but that was that's fun times, and I mean, Bill always is going to give you some good information, some things to work on. He's going to give you a swift kick in the behind for stuff you probably haven't done and should be doing. So it's always fun to when I come across Mr. Roden. Much respect for all the great, wonderful things that he has done, not only as a journalist, but as a Black journalist, and just standing on his own too, and like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. Yeah. Either y'all with it, y'all ain't. It is what it is.
Yeah, and that's important. I know, I mean, you're writing, and that's very impressive. I commend anybody that starts just writing because if you write like that and you're building up, you could write for anything and anybody. And, I always say that I'm not the best writer, I'm more of an orator. I speak better than I write. But for you to be able to do both is a duplicitous, blessing for you because everybody doesn't have access to listen. Everybody doesn't have access to actually see you in person, but they can read what you're writing, and your writings is what lasts. And I remember you and I talking a little bit that you actually had an opportunity to interact with Free from 106 in Park,
Hmm.
and she's a huge Boston fan. Tell me a little bit
Hmm.
about that.
Well, actually, how that happened, that was one of my first biggest breaks that I had when I started writing. Now this is back in like was it 2009, 2010. But I would write stuff, and I looked up one time and saw somebody that's back when I guess I first joined Twitter and was just sharing my articles everywhere. But I looked up and I saw where free retweeted something I wrote, and I was like, did this just really happen? Is this really free? So I looked again. I was like, this really is her. So, I kept doing stuff, and and I would send it to her to make sure she saw it. And she was like, and sometimes she would say, I really don't like it, but yeah, I'll put it anyway. You did good work. She would give me one of those,
Oh,
story
cool.
that was against one of her teams. But, really the big break happened when, she was going to the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks game, and she was said about taking pictures, and then she's like, "Hey, I take the pictures, you write the story." So I wrote the story, and she had talked about starting her website Freeze World, and she was like, "Yeah, I want to include you in it." And of course, over time, eventually that happened, and I had my own segment there called Inside Sports with the General. Now, the
Yes.
website isn't currently there anymore. Now it's been some years, but yeah, that was a huge break for me because I got to touch on like every single sports topic. I didn't really talk just only AFC South at that point in time. I could talk on anything. That's the thing. People think, because I cover the AFC South, I can only talk about AFC South football or anything like that. But the biggest thing is that, the people biggest secret is I can talk any sport. It's just
There
I
you go.
chose to do this sport. I didn't choose
Yeah.
to. I didn't. I can talk about any division, any team, give you a breakdown of pretty much any team because I mean I keep up with it enough to know everything that's going on, and then plus the technical and the structural parts of it, I can break those down too. So you
Yeah.
know, it's just I choose to do the AFC South. But yeah, that gave me a chance to talk about all the different teams and different events and things that were going on around the sports world at that point in time.
It's funny because that's how it starts out. I remember when I started out podcasting, it was just for Panthers fans. And then next thing you know, I'm like, well, let me look at other teams. Let me look at the enemies. That's what I would say. Let me watch the enemies. Because if you watch your enemies, then you know what you got to work on. So it started
Mhm.
out, okay, let me pay attention to the Falcons. Let me pay attention to the Saints. Let me pay attention to the Bucks. Then I was like, well, we play teams outside of that. And so mentally, you're like, wait a minute, well, this season we're playing all AFC South teams. We see them
Mhm.
every few years. So now I gotta watch them. And so then before you know it, it just blossoms. It's like a puzzle. You're like watching from four to four to four to four to four. Now you're up to 32 teams. And it makes
Mhm.
it more interesting and fun, especially like if you're like how my team was, we weren't doing well. So at least gives you at least the still enthusiasm of, the game itself. And I used to love NBA more than anything. Then, once I got on the network, I was actually just doing all football for a long time because I kind of once the Panthers went to the Super Bowl, it just my group morphed to the time that's
Mhm.
all I could talk about was just Panthers, Panthers, Panthers. And I mean, it was even non-Panthers fans that were just following us because they were like, y'all are undefeated. We just want to follow y'all. Like, this is amazing. And then, we lost that one game of all teams to the Falcons, the city I live in. I literally was crippled from leaving that game. I literally felt like I couldn't even get out of my seat because I was like, of
Mm.
all teams we lose to, I gotta see these people. And back then I had flags all over my truck and like you just knew I was a Panthers fan. The reason why I don't do it anymore now is because I got a newer truck and I saw that it kind of leaves like a little gap in the window. And number two, I
Mm-hmm.
would always forget that those flags were on my windows. And if it was a warmer day, I would crack the window and it'd be too late. I've lost flags on the interstate because as soon as I hit the button, they were gone. And I was like, no, and there's no way I can pull over on 85 and go back and get these flags, you know.
Right.
And so I had four of them too. I mean, you saw me going and coming, but to this day, my personalized tag does have an affiliation that anybody behind me knows that I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. So I get all of that, Mike. And this
Mm-hmm.
has been so cool having a behind the scenes with you. So tell everybody how to find you. I see your handle there, but you can read it out to us. So the behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes for the shorts, the videos.
All right. Well, you can find me on, of course, the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePaton 82. And of course, you can find me on Instagram and threads at that's THA, not THE _ general _ MP. You're probably like, dang, he just rattles that off. I'm like, yeah, I'm used to saying it at this point. I say it pretty much every episode and go from there.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much for sitting down with us with a kid behind the scenes footage of Mike Patton. You guys, he was the guest tonight earlier on Prim and Proper Sports. We just kept the chat going, and I was like, hey, got to make sure the fans see this. So we're going to premiere this as one of my shorts. All right, Mike, I appreciate you.